he wanted to rip my head off, and I wanted to rip his head off. I wanted to beat him bad, and he wanted to beat me bad. And
okay, this is I'm going back here, and we're going to have a little talk. And there goes his car.
Two of NASCAR's fiercest competitors, Kevin Harvick and Kyle Busch, never needed social media to start a feud. The track did all the talking. What began as a clash in 2004 turned into one of the sport's longest-running rivalries, fueled by pride, payback, and pure competition. Now, years later, Harvick is finally opening up about the chaos, the grudges, and why, with Busch, it was always the next thing. In a candid November 2025 interview, Kevin Harvick pulled no punches. Reflecting on his long-standing feud with Busch, he acknowledged, "I think that the edge comes off really probably faster than you think. It's just, when does it fire up again? Yeah, usually you can get over things. But with Kyle, it was always the next thing. That next thing came often. For nearly a decade, their paths constantly crossed at the front of the field. Harvick put it plainly. It was always the next moment. It was always because we all raced in the front so much and competed so hard and just always wanted to beat the other so bad. There was an 8-7 to 8 to 10 year period there where it was just head-to-head a lot. You were head-to-head a lot, but that's what drove both companies. That's what drove both of us to be better." For fans, one of the most iconic moments of this rivalry exploded in 2011. Busch was driving in the Texas Truck Series race when contact with Ron Hornaday Jr. led to one of the most controversial retaliations in NASCAR history. Hornaday, piloting Kevin Harvick's number 33 truck and chasing a championship, found himself slammed into the wall by Busch after a minor brush-up on lap 14. Busch wasn't in the hunt for the Truck Series title. He was already a full-time Cup driver, but that didn't stop him from exacting payback, a move that would erupt into a firestorm across NASCAR. That wreck, however, was more than just a heat-of-the-moment clash. It had roots tracing back 7 years earlier to a 2004 Xfinity Series race at Darlington. Back then, Hornaday brake-checked Busch, derailing his title hopes. Busch, known for holding grudges longer than most, didn't forget. Years later, he cashed in. Harvick, who owned Hornaday's truck, was livid. He didn't hold back post-race, telling media outlets that fists might fly if tempers didn't cool. While the situation didn't descend into a physical altercation, the tension was nuclear, and it echoed through both garages for years. The animosity didn't end there. Throughout the 2010s, Busch and Harvick continued to trade blows on and off the track. From Darlington to Homestead, their clashes became regular and often personal. One of the peak moments came in 2011 again, this time during the Southern 500 at Darlington. Late race contact between the two sent Harvick into the wall. What followed was pure chaos. Tempers flared, pit crews clashed, and the rivalry took on a new, dangerous tone. In his July 2025 podcast episode of Kevin Harvick's Happy Hour, Harvick opened up even more about those fiery moments. Sitting across from Joe Gibbs, Harvick dived deep into the emotions of competing against Busch. "Kyle and I are social friends here and there. Not quite like Tony, but I appreciated the competition that was always presented with Kyle Busch because it was in trucks, Xfinity Cup, and it didn't matter what you were racing," Harvick said. Then came the gut punch line that truly revealed the extent of the rivalry. "He wanted to rip my head off, and I wanted to rip his head off, and I wanted to beat him bad, and he wanted to beat me bad." And it went through those years of that head-to-head competition that just made us better racers. These weren't just words. The legacy of their feud has been written in sheet metal, tire marks, and decades of bitter competition. They clashed in nearly every series they raced. They didn't just want to win. They wanted to beat each other specifically. Yet with time comes perspective. Harvick, now retired from full-time Cup racing, sees it differently. He credits Busch as a driver who kept him sharp and pushed him to refine his craft. He also acknowledged that Ron Hornaday, perhaps more than anyone, held on to that grudge longer than he did. Probably might still hold on to some of that, Harvick said. Busch, on the other hand, has shown signs of change in recent years. The former rowdy persona has softened slightly as he watches his son, Brexton, begin his own racing career. Go-karts and legend cars now occupy some of his weekends. And the firebrand we once knew now shares the track with young hopefuls, including Harvick's own son, Keelan. That's right. The next generation might just be set to continue the rivalry. Brexton Busch and Keelan Harvick are carving their paths in the youth racing scene, and the possibility of their father's intense competition passing to their sons is very real. What was once Kyle versus Kevin may soon become Brexton versus Keelan. For now, though, mutual respect has replaced the animosity. Both men understand that the fire that once burned between them made them better. It forged two of the most successful careers in recent NASCAR history. Harvick finished his career with 60 Cup wins and a championship. Busch has over 50 Cup wins and 2 championships. Combined, they shaped 2 decades of racing with relentless passion and often brutal honesty. Perhaps the most shocking thing is how both drivers now speak so openly about their past. In the heyday of their feud, the tension was too hot to touch. Now it's a story shared in interviews and podcasts, a saga of competition, pride, and growth. Busch has not issued a public statement recently about Harvick, but sources close to his camp suggest that he too views the rivalry as a critical part of his evolution. It wasn't always pretty, but it helped define who he is. As Harvick himself put it, that's what great competition is all about. In a sport where grudges are often hyped up and diffused just as quickly, the Harvick-Busch saga stands apart. It had staying power, it had teeth, and it had 2 of NASCAR's most unrelenting personalities pushing each other to the limit every single week. Now that both men are in different stages of life, they can appreciate what they built, not just for themselves, but for the sport. The battles, the fire, the chaos, it all meant something. Off the track, Harvick's podcast, Happy Hour, has become a place for honest reflections and raw memories. His conversation with Joe Gibbs not only shed light on Busch's competitiveness, but also on the behind-the-scenes frustrations that boiled over when managing fiery talents. Harvick's questions to Gibbs about whether Busch or Stewart was harder to manage drew a knowing laugh, but also a deeper understanding of how these rivalries formed. The Homestead clash in 2011 was another flashpoint. Just months after Darlington, tensions between Harvick and Busch reignited. While the specifics were less explosive, it was clear the bad blood hadn't settled. Then again in 2013, Harvick's final year with Richard Childress Racing, the two found themselves trading barbs and door slaps, continuing a war of attrition that never truly paused. Despite it all, the respect runs deep. Harvick says plainly today that their decade-long feud pushed him to become a better driver. Busch, through his on-track performances and continued success, has shown that fire remains part of his DNA, but it's now channeled differently. He's not just racing for trophies anymore. He's racing to show his son what resilience, passion, and legacy look like. And that's perhaps the most poetic ending to one of NASCAR's longest rivalries, a passing of the torch. As Brexton and Keelan grow into their own careers, there's a chance the fire reignites, not out of bitterness, but because competition is in their blood. Harvick and Busch may no longer trade paint at 200 miles per hour, but the lessons, the battles, and the respect they forged will echo for years to come. Because in the world of NASCAR, rivalries aren't just about clashes, they're about what comes after. Growth, reflection, and maybe, just maybe, a smile of acknowledgement when they see the next generation line up on the grid, ready to write their own chapter. That's the legacy of Harvick versus Busch, and it's far from over.